Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily Sams, and thank you so much for joining us. As I mentioned, my name is Emily. My pronouns are she and her, and I have the immense privilege today to be one of the co-chairs for Women's March Ottawa 2021. I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. And first and foremost, I would also like to begin this event with a landed acknowledgement, acknowledging that we organize, work, live, and spend our time on unceded and unsurrendered Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. I would now like to pass it over to Elder Irene Compton, who will begin our spring programming with an opening. So, Elder Irene.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm going to open with a smudge. And this is to get ourselves grounded. I know, sometimes when we start big events like this, everything can be feeling kind of crazy. But once we light these medicines, and you can see here this beautiful flame, and I just want you to check in to see how you're doing. Is your flame high? Is it low? Wow, look at this fire. You ladies are gonna have a good week. So what we're going to do is we just cleanse our mind so that we'll understand good things. We cleanse our ears so we will be open to listening. We cleanse our mouth so we'll say good things. We cleanse our heart so we'll feel good things. And I like to cleanse my tummy because that is the seat of all our emotions, is our tummy. And so we want to cleanse our emotions so that all our ancestors can come and be with us for this whole week. So you'll see behind me, there's a medicine wheel. And so I'm going to sing the Eagle song to each direction. And that medicine wheel represents all the 4 nations of the world. And in that eastern direction is where the Asian and the Middle Eastern nations sit. In that southern direction is where all the indigenous people sit. And in that western direction is where all the Black people sit. And in the northern direction is where all the white people sit. So you'll notice this medicine wheel, each quadrant is equal. And that's what our medicine wheel teaches us, that we are all equal, all the 4 nations of the world. So I'm going to open up with the eagle song, and I want you to think about putting your prayers on the wings of that eagle. If you are stressed, put those prayers on that eagle, because that eagle is the one that flies closest to Creator and takes our prayers. And I ask Creator in all those 4 directions to be with us right now as we go to the 4 directions with the eagle. So there's a chorus in this song, and it goes like this. We are hey, 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 we are hey. So that's what you would sing when you're imagining that eagle flying in that first direction, which is that eastern direction where the Asian people sit. And we're going Chibigwech.
Thank you so, so much, Elder Irene.
It's my honor.
All right, so thank you again, everyone, so much for participating in today's session. We are so excited to have you all here together. So just a little bit about Women's March Ottawa before we officially get into all of the excitement that we're going to have this afternoon. So formed in 2017, Women's March Ottawa is an Ottawa-based and entirely volunteer-run group committed to challenging all forms of systemic discrimination, bias, and oppression. We believe unwaveringly in building an inclusive feminist movement that centers Indigenous, Black, racialized, disabled, low-income, young, old, newcomer, refugee, and 2S LGBTQ+ women and gender diverse people. Now, traditionally, our program has consisted of a yearly march for gender equality and justice. But this year, both in hopes of expanding our reach and our work, and as well as due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, we have pivoted from a traditional march to a full week of online programming designed to bring feminists together to discuss a wide range of timely and important topics and issues. So if you're not already, we encourage you to check out all of our events that we have for this upcoming week. Today is our kickoff event. And we also encourage you to follow us on social media at Ottawa March across all platforms. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are incredibly grateful for any financial donations that you may be able to offer as well to help us support this week of programming as well as future events. I'll give a brief thank you to the Canadian Federation of Nurses Union, Rogers, Councillor Teresa Kavanagh, and our generous individual donors for supporting this week of events through their financial givings. Information about registering for all of our events can be found if you visit our website as well as through our social media. And that's been pasted into the chat as well if you're interested. So let's get into today's session. We're here to kick off our week of programming with a discussion on Black feminist organizing, focusing on the experiences of activism and organizing of Black feminists and social justice organizers in Ottawa. We're joined today by some incredible panelists and our incredible guest moderator who will answer a number of questions and share their knowledge, expertise, and experience with us over the next hour and a half or so. If we have time at the end, we'll open up a space for a Q&A. So if you have questions, please feel free to use the Zoom function Q&A feature to submit them. As well, we have closed captioning available for this session, which if not already enabled on your screen, you can enable at the bottom of your screen. We welcome folks to add comments or thoughts using the chat feature on Zoom throughout the session. But at the same time, we do want to ensure that this is a safer space and please be respectful. So please know that any comments or behaviors that is hateful or disrespectful will result in you being removed from this meeting. Now, to officially kick off the session, I would like to introduce our incredible speakers. Moderating this afternoon's session is Leila. Leila is a Francophone West African from a Muslim background living on the unceded and unsurrendered territory colonial known as Ottawa. Having dropped out of an international development degree, they believe that institutional change comes from an active rejection of the colonial structures that we are tied to. As they fumble through life, Leila is trying to piece themselves back together by searching and understanding that colonialism and white supremacy for understanding the things that colonialism and white supremacy have stolen from them and their people, whether it's stealing back artifacts or understanding the ways in which Islam has shaped their identity. Leila is dedicated to experiencing as much of the boundlessness that is being Black. Our first panelist is Maya, also known as Maya Spoken. Maya Spoken is a multidisciplinary award-winning artist, speaker, educator, and activist. She uses the gift of words to share her story, advocate for others, and promote healing. At 23 years old, she was given her first TEDx talk and became the author of a poetry novel, Warriors in Broad Daylight. Maya Spoken is also the founder of Tell 'em Girl, Women's Spoken Word Showcase, and Loud Black Girls, both platforms giving women the space to be themselves unapologetically. In 2019, she released her first single, Without You, and is now pursuing her bachelor's degree as she challenges systems of racism and oppression within her community. Next, we have Meseret, an award-winning gender-based violence and economic justice advocate. She is the CEO of the Canadian Centre for Women's Empowerment, with a keen interest in addressing systemic barriers and other challenges that prevent women from fully realizing their economic rights. Meseret is also a founder of Maternity Today, a board member with the Centerdown Community Health Center, and an ambassador for several organizations. Meseret was named one of the 100 most accomplished Black Canadian women in 2019 and top 100 women to watch in Canada 2020. Meseret is also the recipient of several awards, including the RPA Prestigious Award from the Honorable Nina Tangri, MPP, Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, and Top 10 L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth awardees. We are also joined today by Alicia-Marie. Alicia uses she, her pronouns, who is the Ottawa Black Diaspora Coalition OBDC co-chair, and mother of two beautiful daughters, an Afro-Indigenous Jamaican Cree and Blackfoot woman from Saskatchewan. Alicia-Marie studied psychology at the University of Regina. Her passion has always been for helping others. Her volunteer and community work started very young in schools, food kitchens, and hospitals. In 2016, Alicia-Marie co-founded the Ottawa Black Diaspora Coalition, which has been focused on anti-Black racism and anti-Indigenous racism work in Ottawa-Gatineau region since. And finally, we have our panelist, Lyse-Pascale. Lyse-Pascale is a Black feminist and Francophone community organizer who advocates for the economic, social, and political rights of people of African descent. Lyse-Pascale believes that representation matters, and that's why she decided to run as a city councillor candidate in the 2020 Cumberland by-election. She is working on many projects, but is particularly passionate about affordable housing, creating employment opportunities for at-risk youth, and improving how the city responds to people having mental health crises. Lyse-Pascale is the recipient of the 2021 Orleans Leading Women and Girls Recognition Award, presented by MP Marie-France Lalonde. Now I'm going to hand it over to Leila to start us off with today's discussion. Over to you, Leila.
Hi, everyone. To start off, hoping that this can be as chill as possible. I feel like we are amongst niggas, and so we can be in conversation with each other. I also want to give a moment to our amazing panel, because as I was listening to the bios, I was like, why am I here? But also just welcome and thank you for being here. Also, if you see me looking up, my setup is just, technology is not on my side. So I'm not just looking off, I just have like my laptop up here and then my phone down here. So let's get right into it. I'm so excited to hear from all of you amazing people. Just to clarify, my pronouns are they and them. I know in some ways in the conversations of feminism, we're still a little bit but just wanted to clear that up right off the bat. So getting to the first question, and this is just open to anyone who wants to start it off. We'll start with, can you share more about your advocacy and organizing experience in this city? What are some of the biggest lessons you have learned from these experiences? As an activist, what brings you joy? What helps you avoid burnout? And whoever would like to go first. This is quite the Zoom time, so I guess it'll be like whoever speaks first and then we'll figure it out.
Okay, I'd like to share this before. Black women's activism in Canada has taken many forms, individually and collectively. They have not only asserted their womanhood by initiating activities in their own communities, but have seen themselves as an active part of a larger citizenry. And I've taken this from Bristow, 1993, page 146, in a book I recommend you to read, Uncovering the Well, Black Feminism in Canada, written by Njoki Wen. Very, very good. Going back to the question, I love seeing the community organizing, and that's why I'm director at 613-819 Black Hub Noir, a Black advocacy group that regularly brings people of African descent in the National Capital Region to coordinate volunteer-led efforts to address anti-Black racism through systemic change, primarily in education, justice, employment, business, and politics. And we are currently raising funds for a Compassion Not Cops campaign. It's a $25,000 study, and we're at $19,000 raised. And that study will recommend non-police responses to people experiencing mental health crisis. This will include examples like Eugene, Oregon's CAHOOS program that replaces armed police with two-person teams consisting of a medic and a crisis worker. And in its 31-year history, that program has never had a client or a CAHOOS worker harmed. I am also involved in the Burundian and Rwandan community, where I do my best. I do what I can to assist members of the community with issues related to access to affordable housing, transitioning from shelters to Ottawa community housing units, immigration cases, finding furniture for the new houses, responding to gender-based violence, and accessing needed resources like lawyers, et cetera. That's what I can say. One of the biggest lessons I have learned from these experiences, we need more access to mental health services, because the crisis lines, they're not providing the needed ongoing long-term support or medication prescription that the Black community members need. And we also need to create a space or mental health centers, hospitals, why not, appropriate culturally and that are centered around Black experiences of mental health. We have our own, particular issues. It is really important to support the work that the Ottawa Black Mental Health Coalition is doing. 2, women, especially new Canadians or newcomers with trauma and mental health challenges caused by war, genocides, and other causes, go through gender-based violence alone. And when they speak up, it's often too late, almost too late, because the damage is huge. And the lack of information at the early stage, along with the culture of silence that says, stay there and suffer for your children, it's better than a divorce, are really harmful. And so more needs to be done. 3, we need more shelters that can welcome mothers with their children. It's unbelievable how there's a lack of that, because otherwise women won't leave their abusive homes without their children. They can't leave them there, so they cannot leave their homes, their husbands or whatever, if they don't know where to take their children, if they cannot take them with them. Did you ask, as an activist, what brings me joy? Okay. So what brings me joy is to see the community coming together. That's it. To see the community coming together to take action is the feeling of satisfaction that I get when I do my community work. I have to say that it's very selfish. I love to say, oh, I love giving to the community, but I do it because I feel good when I do it. So I get something back. I feel good. That's it. And the third thing is to see a woman breaking free from an abusive relationship. I don't know if you have, what helps me avoid a burnout. I take warm baths, like at least when I don't take care of myself, it's once a week. When I do it a lot and I need it a lot, it's like 3 times a week with candlelights, scented candlelights. I listen to relaxation massage music when I do that. Lots of dance hall all the time, dance hall. Sometimes R&B, depending on the mood. I'm never too shy to seek help, to ask for help. If I need to take a break, when my body's telling me to take a break, it's time for a break. I do that because I learned from my experience that there's no shame in admitting that it's okay not to be okay. And I rely on my support system. I call my friends, my family, especially during these difficult times of COVID-19, because it's better to avoid a mental health breakdown and find myself in the hospital by taking a break from my activities than playing tough and not doing my job well anyway, just because I want to put on my my good face on or a superwoman dress. So my mental health is a priority. I do all I can to avoid the burnout by doing all those things I just said.
Thank you for sharing. At the beginning, when you were reading the quote, I was just thinking, I was like, let's not forget, Black women were burning down cities in Canada, you know, running away from their masters. Like, we have feminism, the foundation, we're in it. So thank you so much for sharing. I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to share their answer.
I'll share. So personally, I started out just drawing from my own experiences, overcoming abuse and other forms of oppression. And for me, it was through spoken word poetry. And that was always like my thing. Like I think I was in grade 12. I had entered like a spoken word competition, and like my purpose for doing it was simply because I just needed to share my experiences like somewhere, anywhere. So I just went to the audition and didn't even expect to like actually get into the show, to be honest. I was like, oh, someone will like listen to me? Okay, like let me go to this audition. And my experience was so positive for me in the space of spoken word poetry that I just wanted to give others that experience as well. And I wanted to give others the chance to, you know, say out loud the things that we're taught to kind of keep inside. I wanted to give others a space where they could experience what I had and have others encourage them to do that. And so that's kind of how Tell 'em Girl started. And that's something like I always say to my friends, I'm like, tell 'em girl, like, go ahead. I say that to everybody, like my guy friends, my male teachers even. I'd be like, yes, tell 'em girl. And Loud Black Girls. And that was what it was all about. It was creating those spaces where we can be our true selves, you know, without apology. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, you know, kind of in this journey of advocacy, is that you have no idea like what you carry. And this thing was something so small for me. I was like, oh, I'll just do like a small little open mic and people will come and like, it's not really a big deal. But I wasn't giving myself and everyone who showed up enough credit because it was a big deal. And it kind of ties into what gives me joy. And what gives me joy definitely was seeing, you know, all of these folks come up on the stage and say, you know, like, I've never shared my poetry out loud, or I've never like told my story out loud before, but I'm gonna do it today. And like, I kid you not, they would blow everybody's minds like with their words every single time. And seeing people get on the stage and step into their truth is truly what gave me so much joy. Like I cry at every show because I'm like, you guys are so beautiful. And for me, you know, we're all kind of working towards a revolution, and part of that is reclaiming our right to joy and reclaiming our right to rest. And so for myself, I think it was amazing to see people reclaim that right in this space. And so even for myself, sometimes I have to remind myself that every time I take a step back to experience joy and experience rest in whatever form that may look like, I'm acting out in defiance of a system that wishes to take that from me. You know, joy is my birthright. Rest is my birthright. And we have to make sure that we're prioritizing giving ourselves what is our birthright in defiance of that system. That is a part of the activism that we do, you know, every single day. And so it all kinds of ties into what gives me joy is to helping others see that they're worthy of that. They're worthy of joy. They're worthy of rest, whether it looks like, you know, going and performing a poem for the first time, or, you know, sitting back and watching Netflix literally all day and not feeling bad about it. That's what it's all been like for me. And it's been an incredible journey, you know, to learn that through the work that I do and to watch other people experience it too.
Thank you for sharing that. As you were talking, I in my head was like, tell them, girl, go on. About creating space, giving people voice. Yes, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing and the work that you do. I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to share before we go to the next question. Going once, going twice. Okay. So for the next question, the feminist movement is very broad, encompassing many different identities, philosophies, and ways of approaching the world. It is important to address the harm that systemic racism and anti-Blackness within feminism has caused. What does being a feminist mean to you, and what can feminist movements do to build more inclusive movements?
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, to me, feminism means, working toward this achieving gender equality. And sorry, can you hear me? Because my camera is.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so as I said, to me, feminism means working towards achieving gender equality. And everyone is born equal regardless of gender, race, sexuality. However, there are so many aspects of life in which people are not treated equally, whether politically, economically, legally, and socially, as we know. So for me, again, feminism is all about working again as a system built to keep certain group of people oppressed and striving toward, equality for everyone. So this means, fighting for intersectionality and acknowledging how race, sexual orientation, and economic status affect feminism. So it means like it's maybe a civic conversation with people. And also it means also taking a meaningful stance, on injustice and standing up for inequality. So as you know, ultimately women movement is not all about, like, it's not only women issue, it's beyond that, because, having this inclusive movement, of course, it means, it helps for us to ensure equal opportunity to raise, our voice. So yeah, that's all about, feminism for me. And then that's my practice every day as a feminist organization and as a feminist leader. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that and putting an emphasis on the fact that, like, it's gender, like the equity, equality of genders, because I think a lot of the time that's something that we forget, right? It's not just women, it's not just men. There are so many identities between and around that also have to be included in these conversations. So thank you for sharing. Anyone else who would like to go?
Can I go, or? I'd like to add to that by answering what can feminist movements do to build more inclusive movements, because Meseret just answered to the first question. I'd like to start by saying Black feminists such as Rosemary Brown, who in her keynote speech to the 1973 National Congress of Black Women asked, "But what did I learn of us, of you and I, the Black women who through choice or luck or by birth make this our home? Where do we fit into this space and into the changes and development that are taking us? Where do Black women fit into the women's movement?" This question is asked again and again throughout the years. We are erased, invisible, and the society, but also within the women's movements, we can say it's racist. So Black activists and feminists like Marie-Joseph Angélique, Chloe Cooley, Harriet Tubman, Marianne Chad, Viola Desmond, and it goes on and on, the list is so long, are the foundation builders of the feminist movement. Black women, we existed long before the current women's movements, but we are not recognized at the forefront. And so I invite you to read about the Congress of Black Women of Canada and the Black Women's Collective Toronto. Their records of meetings and conventions are available. They organize around issues such as childcare, education, police violence, racism, international solidarity, and human rights. Please find out how their criticisms reshaped International Women's Day events and the fight for abortion rights. Go research their names and visit riseupfeministarchive.ca/Black women in the women's movement / And so I'll say we do not need to be included because we are the movement. All that needs to be done is to be recognized, like what you're doing today By the way, kudos to you, you're amazing. And those stories need to be told and shared for everyone to know. I'll say non-Black women adopted the Black women way of organizing. And for example, the Me Too movement was started by a Black woman, Tarana Burke. She was only acknowledged after a white woman tried to pull the Me Too movement and adopt the hashtag, you know? And those stories happen all the time to Black people, by the way, in all the fields, including their inventions, that are not recognized. So did you know also that the concept of intersectionality was created by a Black woman who wrote a book about it and talked about it first? Did we know about it? So many things. So I'm gonna stop there, but maybe add that we need to be recognized at the forefront, not included, because when you talk about inclusion, that means we're excluded, but we're there. We are in communities. We are fighting gender abuse in our communities. Look at Meseret, the work she's doing is amazing. But events like these ones are amazing. And I think that's a start that needs to be encouraged, Women's March Ottawa. So I just want to say thank you and bravo.
Oui, avec le français. Yeah, I, as you were talking, I was like, it even is just here, right? We're a group of women and gender non-conforming folks that, like, yes, are coming to have this conversation about feminist issues and the feminist movement, but also touch everything and are touching everything from parenting to police brutality to healthcare to education to the carceral system. Like, it's just so many things that we are at the foundation of and are working to change and will change, that when you see, especially white women, white people who are out here trying to take these things from us, we always have to come back to here where we are the center, we are fighting, and we are the solution. So thank you for your answer. I want to see if there's anyone else who wanted to add on.
I just want to add to that. Hi, folks. I just want to add into the realm of feminism. I have never called or considered myself a feminist. And so before anybody starts clutching their pearls, this just by way of the societal understanding of feminism, right? And so for me, even in this conversation right now, feminists, as just like the title of feminism, are considered white women who are feminists. They don't need the preface to their title. They don't need white feminists. And here we are in this space as Black feminists. So essentially we're fighting for equity in a movement fighting for equity, which to me sincerely blows my mind. I also think that it's important to acknowledge the ways in which feminism is harmful to Black folks. And under the construct that feminism has a specific guidelines in which you must fit into, while not respecting culture, religion, and even just a Black way of life. And so in not fitting into these specific boxes, white feminism can shame us, force us into silence, tell us that living a way in which we choose freely to live in our religious manner or a cultural manner, that it doesn't fit into this feminism box. And I think that's incredibly harmful. I think feminism really is allowing everyone equity and the freedom of choice to live how they want to live without persecution and judgment. And I find that really difficult under the current structure of the feminist movement, and how it is understood by society. In terms of like how feminism can, build a more inclusive movement, I feel like the feminist movement has to show up for intersections. It's not simply okay to show up once a year and to a Black movement with your signs and your Black squares and then disappear for the rest of the year. It's not okay. Like, you have to show up in Black spaces. Feminists have to show up in Black spaces. Feminists have to show up in queer spaces. Feminists have to show up in Indigenous spaces, BIPOC spaces. Feminists have to show up if you want to build that community of inclusiveness for all of the intersections that it encompasses, because that is missing. When you are at a Black event, you see Black faces and a scatter of allies. But when you're at a women's march, for example, even on the front of the Women's March page, you will see a sea of white faces and maybe one or two Black folks in that space. So it is, I feel, because the feminist movement encompasses all intersection of womanhood and identifying women and non-gender conforming folks, that it's their responsibility to the movement to show up in those spaces and also make it then welcoming and comfortable for us to show up in the movement, which has been really co-opted by white women.
Thank you. The black squares got me, but I feel like, especially when you were saying we have to identify ourselves as Black feminists in a movement that comes from us, but at the same time is like when you're thinking about Muslim women, when you're thinking about Black women, when you're thinking of differently abled women, like so often are just like cast aside. And building those relationships and building that respect and really taking the time to understand those different cultures and identities and traditions to properly integrate them into the work is so important. So thank you for your answer. I don't know if there was anyone else who wanted to add.
I might just add something like small. I think for me, I might just add it because it's something that's really transformed how I view feminism and just the fight for equality for all genders. And I truly do believe that I think it must be about, liberation and liberation from the gender binary that has been created and weaponized to give power to white people and create disparities between the genders and races. And coming, to that realization has really helped me realize that I think the feminist movement definitely must do more to center voices that are already living in the truth of liberation from the gender binary, I was listening to Angela Davis, and she was talking about how, the Black Lives Matter movement and the movement for abolition must do more to center trans voices, because they are definitely leading us in, these views of liberation and how we can deconstruct our internalized views on gender. And I think that's so important in the feminist movement as well, as just liberation and how can we, deconstruct our own internalized beliefs surrounding the gender binary and acknowledge how it's upholding just white supremacy as a whole.
Thank you. That is such an important point. Just remembering that there was a time before the white people came for us where gender looked very different. And like we were not doing all of this messy, this and that. Like we were free as a bird and doing it right. And so, yeah, that is definitely some real, I always have to remember not to in public, not to, I'm so sorry, folks.
We get it today. Let it out. Why?
It's some real shit. We're all adults. It's some real shit. It's some real shit. Thank you so much for your answers. For the next question, we are more than a year into living through a global pandemic, a panorama, a Polly Pocket. We know that due to systemic racism and inequality, COVID-19 has hit some communities, namely Black and Brown communities, a lot harder than others. What does COVID-19 response recovery look like from a gender and racial justice perspective?
Okay, so one thing I had in my mind, that I've been thinking about was how come when it comes to the COVID-19 vaccine, in the priority groups, Black people are not there when the data released by Ottawa Public Health in le rapport La COVID-19 et l'identité raciale à Ottawa de février à août 2020, more than 60% are impacted by the virus. 60% are Black people, impacted by the COVID-19, and they're not in the priority groups that are to receive the vaccine. I don't understand because, okay, my partner is a frontline worker, and he got his shot, but I am not a frontline worker. I'm not in the age group like 60 or 50 over, so I'm not to receive the shot, but I'm exposed, So, and I mean the 60% of Black people who are exposed to COVID-19. So how am I not in the group priority of people who are to receive the shot? So I don't get it. I really don't get it. So I think that first of all Black people, there should be a group of people like Black people group priority number 4, among the people, seniors, frontline worker, whatever, and then Black people there. That is done, and it should be non-negotiable because the data is not lying. We should be there. That's my first. That's the only thing I have to say there.
Absolutely. Like the fact that we can't show up and be like,
I'm a high risk. I'm a high risk. The data is, that's why we've been asking for data. And, it was so hard to get the data because they were scared to get they knew. And now that we have the data, we're not using it, to get the vaccine. It doesn't make sense.
oh, I love it. Really just is that it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. No, thank you for that. Does anyone else want to add? I feel like it really is. It just doesn't make sense.
Oh, I can go ahead. Probably maybe I can share my perspective as well. So, Liz, thank you so much for sharing, because this is also one of the topics we were discussing, in one of my group yesterday. So we know that, of course, we shouldn't deny the fact that, Black people are more likely, even essential workers at this point, living in low, income housing with poor ventilation. And also they're the one who face, the health disparity in terms of even education, justice, employment, even during this pandemic. And then what makes us worry, especially in my organization, is we have seen that, especially Black single mothers. It's very sad to see, even there is a huge shortage of food in Ottawa because it's very, very hard to access. And then one of the reasons is even stigma and discrimination among Black community to access those resources. And also mental health service, even during this pandemic, we have seen that how it was very, responsive. And then it's very hard even to navigate some of the resources. And then it's really, really very challenging, especially for survivors of domestic violence. And the other challenge, of course, is still we are advocating, of course, now the national gender-based violence strategy or national action plan is out there, but still we want to see all those issues specifically, in relation to Black women has to be included, because our priority is we need to have safe housing. Definitely, Liz also, she already mentioned, we are advocating women to flee to the shelter, but shelter bed is full and the housing is not affordable. Most women, because of economic abuse, they don't have credit card. The tenancy law is so crazy for Black women because everybody will ask you to pay first and last payment. Your credit score is renewed up because of your perpetuators. There is no justice out there. So it's a lot of things for a woman they had been through, and the system was totally, it's very frustrating and sad, specifically to support marginalized women. So I would say this, opportunities would be very good somehow, especially for policymakers to reflect where we are at this point. And then I hope that the feminist economic recovery plan, probably it will be, a good start, and then we'll see what will happen.
Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah. I'd seen Alicia, I think you unmuted at the same time.
Yeah, somebody else in meeting also. It's me. Okay. So I hate to be the pessimist on board, but here I am. I respect everybody's perspectives, and all of everybody's comments and insights are incredibly valid and factual, but we also have to acknowledge that the issues affecting our communities are not pandemic issues. They're systematic issues that will exist long after the pandemic is over. And so these are things that I hope that we can continue to address outside of pandemic issues, where we've always had housing issues, healthcare access issues. We've always had these issues. And so to me, it's almost harmful to talk about these in spaces as if this is like a pandemic problem that we're having, that we're facing. Yes, our health is more at risk in these spaces during the pandemic. Yes, we're at a higher rate of experiencing abusive 911 calls against Black folks. We do have we don't have the access to the vaccines, as was said. I do have to acknowledge my privilege. I am biracially Afro-Indigenous, and so I do acknowledge that is absolutely not okay, that it's not offered to also Black folks during this time. but the conversations have to continue far beyond like the pandemic intersection and just the acknowledgement that our housing issues were before and they're going to continue after, our health issues were before and they're going to continue after. So I just wanted to raise that point.
No, I think that's a really important perspective. As you were talking, I was like, that is something I haven't connected, you know? Whether it's a pandemic, if it's the flu, if it's even the cold, somehow we're going to be disproportionately affected and our lives are going to be on the line. And so it is important to be really centering the fact that whether the pandemic is here or not, people are trying to kill Black people. The systems, institutions are trying to kill Black people. So thank you for adding that on.
I also want to add one more thing in regards to the vaccines. I know that there is a lot of folks who really are pro-vaccine and do want the vaccines, but there are a lot of Black folks affected and afraid to get those vaccines and afraid to go through that experience. And those are also valid. So I would like to just encourage like space for those conversations also to really just take place and have honest chats about those things.
Well, there are conversations taking place in the Black community, you know, community organizations inviting doctors and Ottawa public health experts to come and talk to the community members. So we are doing that work, but adding the Black group as a priority group, that is a responsibility that we should demand that, because there are Black people that do want to get that vaccine. And the work of raising awareness and educating those who do not want, it's not only Black people, it's not only in the community of Black people, there are people who do not want to take the vaccine. In the white communities, in the Indigenous communities, in the singers communities, there are also people who are afraid of taking the vaccine. So it's not only the work that has to be done of raising awareness or educating about the vaccine in the Black community only, but we need to take a look at the data of 60% of Black people being exposed to COVID-19 and not adding that group in the group priority of people having to take being the priority group of taking the vaccine. That does not make sense at all. And that's just what I wanted to highlight. And whether those were issues, there were housing issues before COVID or not, it's good to address that. However, it doesn't mean that we should not advocate, like Meseret said, that we should not advocate right now and taking advantage of COVID-19 to say, in times of COVID-19, there is more risk, we are more touched, therefore, there should be more action. There's no harm of doing that. Just wanted to encourage the work that Meseret is doing, advocating for that, and not discourage that, right?
And I think that there is a sensitivity, right, that has to happen is like with what Alicia was saying, with what you're saying, is that these issues are, because these issues aren't talked about on a daily basis, because they're not being integrated into the ways in which we are fighting against healthcare inequalities and education inequalities and economic inequalities, the pandemic is able to exacerbate those issues, right? It's that we have to be dealing with the fact that this is not a pandemic issue. But because we're not dealing with it before, because we're not dealing it now, and because we won't be dealing with it as a systemic and an institutional barrier, the pandemic comes in and it makes it worse because we don't have the infrastructure and we haven't been paying attention. And it's the same thing with education about the vaccine, right? There's a lot of, my father is out here being like, listen, I've been alive a long time and I've been seeing what they're doing with the vaccine and the healthcare and doing with niggas all around through history. I know a lot of people have been circulating information about this Tuskegee experiments of being very scared of the ways in which, and a very real fear of the ways in which the healthcare system has really disadvantaged and been violent towards Black folks. And so when we are talking about prioritizing Black folks in the vaccination, and we are talking about educating Black folks, it's also having like that compassion of really being like, these issues are real, these fears, these anxieties are real. Yes, I would love my father, who is about to be 70 years old, to just like, sir, we need you to be okay, but also I have to be honest with my father and understand that anxiety and sit down and have those long conversations where I understand where he's coming from, he understands where I'm coming from. And I think that has to be integrated in the way that institutions are trying to bring in the Black community, right? The same way that we were talking about in the last answer. We have to bring in culture and history and all of these traditions and all of these ways that we have dealt with institutions, systems, into the ways in which movements and organizations come to our communities. So thank you folks for your answers. But I just love talking to niggas. Wow. Thank you folks for being here.
I would like to echo and agree with what Leila is saying in that we're on a panel and we're having this conversation in front of folks, and there's folks who don't have that haven't been educated on the issue or had it brought to the forefront that there are huge housing problems for our population of people. And I don't want the conversations to end. I don't want the conversations to only be acknowledged as pandemic specific. There is a larger problem, and yes, it is exacerbated by the pandemic, but we don't have that generational wealth, and we don't have a lot of times that the single family home, usually in a lot of cases, we have multiple generations living in a home, and that's not new. And so that's what I'm talking about. So COVID is exacerbating the fact that we are living in smaller spaces with more individuals, that our population is more likely to be those essential workers. Those are all actual and important facts to acknowledge. However, this was an issue that is being exacerbated by COVID, not as a result of COVID. And I just wanted to point that out. So thank you, Leila.
No, thank you. Thank you all. For the next question, so the Canadian federal government recently announced their federal 2021 budget, estimated at approximately $101 billion. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Wow, folks, let me get it together. In a world where you are in charge of this funding, what would your priority areas be?
Can I go ahead?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know even the number actually. So yeah, as you said, it's the first time, even in terms of especially empowering women and children, this is the first time ever the federal government has allocated funding for enhanced protection of women and children in a situation, especially from family violence perspective. And of course, they also propose funding issue addressed, which issues addressed on the National Action Plan. Actually, if you remember, I know, Leila, you're also part of our National Action Plan, consultation. So it's a huge funding, and then it's very interesting. And then what makes me interested is in 724-page document, women were mentioned 669 times, appearing in almost every page. So that's a huge step, to ensure gender equality in Canada, even during this pandemic. And I hope this budget represented a missed opportunity by the federal government to recognize, for example, is like the importance of investing and empowering survivors of domestic violence in Canada. So far, according to Stat Canada, we have more than 99,000 of survivors in Canada. But unfortunately, what we have is it's just a short-term relief, even to support, maybe a short-term shelter bed or restraint order. Of course, that's very important, but we need to create an ecosystem to rebuild their economy, because one of the critical barriers for a woman to live a abusive relationship is economic issues. So definitely economic empowerment has to be in place, as a priority for the government, specifically for Black and racialized community. Because the issue is, as you said, it's a systemic issue. Even for a Black survivors to be an entrepreneur, it's very, very challenging, in our context, because of your skin color, even the bank, they don't trust you. That's a reality we are facing at this point, so that has to be addressed. That's what we are advocating. We knew that we are educating women to live abusive relationship and to stay in shelters, even though we don't have even shelter bed. The housing price is so crazy and kind of thing. So this has to be the priorities. That's what we advocate for the National Action Plan. And the second priority has to be is also the mental health service. Mental health service is underfunded. So when you come to survivors of domestic violence, the mental health cost is a lot, specifically for women, especially women in racialized community. As you know, there's a systemic racism. And also the cost is very, very, expensive, especially in Ontario. Even the waiting list, most of the times they stay more than a year. So it has to be addressed. Still now it's underfunded. That should be also a priority. And the other thing is as well, we are also advocating for scholarship fund for Black women to go back to school, especially survivors. Sadly, the Ontario education system, especially to access even OSAP, you have to be qualified. A woman who is abused and then, perpetuated by, her abuser in any ways, and then most of them, they don't have even credit card. So because of their credit histories, they are not eligible to go back to school. So we need to have, funding for that so that women, they can go to school, rebuild their life. So in that case, we'll, kind of, encouraging them to stay away from their perpetrator. So the other priority, of course, is, as you all know, as a Black leader, I have seen that the Black community, and especially Black leaders on the nonprofit sector, we were overlooked, we know that. And also we knew that only 0.1% of, funding is for the Black, led organization. And of course, we saw that they promised and to give us like more than $300 million, on this budget. So we'll see what will happen. So that's also our priority. Still, it's underfunded. For example, if you want to have $100,000, budget, so they will give you only always $24,000, So for us, it is very, very important, and we need to see that promises and then into action. That's what we are advocating. Of course, especially from the gender-based violence perspectives, we knew that a lot of advocacy and also a lot of effort has been made for the past decade. Even we don't have any national gender-based violence action plan for the past, but there were grassroots organizations, including like YWCA Canada, Women's Shelter Canada, the Canadian Women Federation, who had been advocating for childcare even nationally. That's also a huge issue for us in our context. And then we are also grateful for their work and many more organizations, individuals who continue to do revolutionary works rooted in equality, decolonization, and anti-oppression, including intersectional feminism. So this is a critical point for us, especially as a women leader, especially, in this situation. Definitely we need to continue and ask where that money goes. We knew that even we had a lot of funding for mental health. For example, my organization, when we apply funding, we got only 10% of our budget. Why? Because we don't have even the answers. So I think that should be also a priority in order to include those marginalized community in any way. So thank you.
Give all the money to Meseret. I found it fun. I feel like a lot of what you were saying is why I was laughing at $101 billion. I'm like, what an expensive Band-Aid that probably won't stick. It's like, it's giving very poor solution oriented. I don't know if anyone else wanted to add on.
I might want to say something. We can also reframe the question by like this. What does the federal budget have that will benefit Black women? And what do we have to do to pressure the government to follow through on those commitments? Because this announcement is great, but the allocations of fund is another thing. How does that money get to the community, especially BIPOC communities? Why do I say that? Because I have been witnessing many Black community organizations and Black community organizations pleased by the announcement, right? However, I am quite concerned that the funding, will not get to Black organizations, particularly grassroots organizations. I say this because a few months ago, hundreds of Black organizations, one of them being Operation Black Vote, were turned down after applying for federal funding from the Black Community Initiative. The program is called was called Supporting Black Canadian Communities Initiative, because the leadership were not Black enough. The rejection letter sent by Employment and Social Development Canada said that to them. The leadership was not Black enough. And the Employment and Social Development Canada Minister, Ahmed Hussein, apologized, saying that was completely unacceptable. But, you know, funding denied because organizations are not Black enough and they're Black. Okay. Anyways, so this is why I'm concerned that this money might not get to our Black communities, because there are so many excuses. You do not qualify because of this. And now we do not qualify because we're not Black enough. What else? Anyways, so if I were to be in charge of this funding, my 5 priority areas will be Black mental health, startup businesses, supporting BIPOC entrepreneurs, because it's so hard to start the business. So hard. You know, yes, supporting businesses, but what about starting a business? Because that's what we need to support new entrepreneurs. Anyways, childcare and decent affordable housing. I said decent affordable housing and job creation. Those are my top 5 priority areas. However, I really don't know, you know, if I'm in charge, I'll make sure that those allocating the money, people sitting at the table, they're Black people, man. I'm sorry. I'll make sure that we include BIPOC individuals around the table, because I kind of feel like they're not included at the seats. Yes.
It goes to a lot of the things we were saying, right? It's like Black folks have for a long time been doing the work of building community, whether it's in institutions, governments, cities, countries. And so thank you for that answer. At the end of the day, we have to be at the table to even see our communities prioritized. And a lot of the time, as we see $101 billion go off, and with a lot of priority issues not being properly addressed, you can see that the people at the table don't look like the people who need to be prioritized. Thank you for your points. Is there anyone else who'd like to go? No? Okay. So the next question is for Lyse-Pascale. You recently ran for Ottawa City Council in the Cumberland by-election. Could you talk a little bit about your experience as a candidate working in the political sphere?
Okay, so first of all, I like to see myself as a public servant, not as a politician, because politician to me is a dirty word. I find it's an insult. Now it's a new thing for me. Politician, no, please don't call me politician. Okay, it was a great experience for me. It taught me a lot about how the city of Ottawa runs. I still don't get a lot of things, but I kind of got an idea. I realized that our community needs safer roads, cycling lanes, you know, affordable housing, taking care of our environment, such as getting rid of plastic bags, man. Better addressing violence in the community and the loss of trust in the police, youth employment and services, access to mental health services, especially for youth and their families, among other things. There's so many things. So did I talk about second lanes? Anyways, but something that was very important, that was really funny, is that actually I was told that I should drop out of the race because of my mental health challenges, because I was taking self-care breaks from time to time when I felt like I needed to. My body was telling me, okay, you're tired, we can't do this. And I replied to that person, hey, I need to stay in the race because I need to send a strong message that we also belong in this space, okay? We belong in this space, and we might be disabled, but we're able, and we can accommodate, you know, and if I don't win, it's okay. At least I will have done it and proved to myself and others that we can do it. And you know what? I managed to be in the top 3 Out of 10 candidates, I was number 3. It was amazing, and I proved my point, because I know that environment is not mental health friendly, but I think we should also make sure that we include, you know, people living with all kind of disabilities in that space as well. That's my mission. Anyways, I was very touched by the support of the community, because it made me realize that when you give of yourself and your time and you do it sincerely with your heart, you receive back from the community. Man, they were there for me, for real. And you were there every step of the way, believing in me. And I'm forever thankful, because I will not have been able to do it without you. I had $0, and you gave me everything, every flyer, every sign. I was able to do it because of you, because you believe in me. So thank you very much. And I said during my campaign, I already feel like a winner, no matter what the outcome is, because of you, because of your support and your love. So it is still true. So merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Thank you. And thank you. I feel like it's such an important thing to, while you're building, to integrate the things that you want to see in the result. Like someone being like, why are you resting? If I need to take a mental health break, I'm gonna take a break. Like we see what happens when people don't take breaks, and it just looks chaotic, very dictator. Like we are trying to build something different, something sustainable, something healthy. And so thank you for sharing that. I think it's super important. For the next question, we are going to Meseret. So as the CEO of the Canadian Center for Women's Empowerment, an incredible organization doing a lot of feminist advocacy, specifically around bringing awareness to the issue of economic abuse and supporting survivors, could you tell us a little bit more about economic abuse and why it often isn't discussed in conversations around domestic violence, gender-based violence, and intimate partner violence? Oop, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. So let me share the brief description about the organization, because some of the participants may know who is like CCFWE. So we are a national organization based here in Ottawa, and then our mandate is to raise awareness on economic abuse and injustice, and also supporting survivors to recover from economic abuse and financial abuse. So we provide support for survivors of domestic and intimate partner violence. And then our advocacy first is, working through, with a number of organizations. So our main goal is to bring some of the barriers, to remove some of the barrier, and then support women, So that's the organization. So in terms of economic abuse, so people commonly use the term economic abuse and financial abuse interchangeably, since they involve similar behavior. So I would like to clarify. So financial abuse is controlling someone's finance, stealing money, and coercing someone's dates. Whereas economic abuse is financial abuse plus restricting, sabotaging, exploiting someone's resources such as housing, employment, and transportation and food, which is not even criminalized in our context at this point. So economic abuse is underreported, underrecognized, even seldomly discussed form of violence, which often accompanied by other form of violence, like including physical, psychological, and emotional abuse. So right now we are working with a number of organizations from coast to coast to support survivors. So we are the only organization in Canada advocating, and then through policy change. So and then just to give you also an insight like how economic abuse looks like, because it's underreported, as I said, and then nobody even knows, especially women. They didn't know even they had been through in this situation, because we don't have any clear definition in Canada. That's what we are advocating. We don't have a clear policy. Of course, our Divorce Act is recently amended, and the financial abuse is also included. That's a huge step. But the issue is we don't have even national data. So my organization right now, in collaboration of City of Ottawa and then Stats of Women, we are conducting the first national research So that would be also a good opportunity to open up and to support women. So when you see a woman's life, especially women who'd been impacted by economic abuse, is like they have a lot of issues. So the first issue is like mental health. So the mental health is so like, you know, it's a lot in any ways, because one of the characteristics of economic abuse survivors is most of them, they declare bankruptcy because of their abusers, their perpetrators, you know, control their finance, properties, and also cash, banks, and especially some of the perpetrators prohibiting victims from using their credit card, writing checks, even accessing marital accounts, refusing to contribute costs for child support, and sometimes also they will push them to involve in some of the criminal and fraudulent activities. So this really affect women. And then unfortunately, especially newcomers, marginalized women, including Black, Indigenous women, are highly impacted because of systemic barrier. So when you see the statistics globally, 95% of women who experience domestic violence have economic abuse. So as I said, economic abuse, it doesn't rely on physical proximity. It will be continue women after she leave that relationship. Unfortunately, we don't have any infrastructure in Canada. So one of the barriers is the banks. In the banks, in the Canadian bank, we don't have family violence program. So right now, my organization is working with women community organization, financial institutions, including banks, utilities, essential service workers, telecom companies, industry regulators, local and national government, criminal justice like police, prosecutor, and family justice system, including even family lawyers and academics. They are involving to develop some kind of policy. So right now we have a national task force. So our first priority is to change the banking system. Sadly, the banking system, even especially for Black women and marginalized women survivors, there is no any way. Simply a woman, when she stays in shelter, if her perpetrators take her banking information and then take money, usually that happens, most women, they don't have any credit card. So that really affected them to continue their life. Okay, now we're asking them to go and then find a place for a woman, but it's very hard. As I said, I mentioned renting is an issue, and plus the banking, they don't have any program. But what we have seen from Australia, United Kingdom, and US, they have amazing program. Survivors have the right to even skip the bank fee for 2 years. You know, there is also an arrangement in many countries, but here in Canada, we don't have that infrastructure. So we develop our policy recommendation for Canadian banks, including the Federal Consumer Agency, Canada. So hopefully that's also one of our expectations. And the second thing is, of course, our national data would be also very, you know, interesting. That would be great. Of course, we advocate to include this issue in the criminal justice system, and of course, in the national, you know, action plan. So when we ask why we don't talk about it, because we don't have any definition, any policy, any research and everything, but it's everyday woman's life. As I say, the statistics globally, 96%. So we have seen even like telecom companies, she can't afford, she's with perpetrators, they cut her bill, they cut her hydro. Imagine, it's very hard even to get the support for a woman without telecom and then everything. So the billing company also, they need to have a family violence program. The, you know, housing the tenants, you know, has to be also amended. That's what we are advocating, so that women, they can have safe space. The education system also have, you know, a safe space for a woman to go back to school and rebuild. And as I said, also the economic empowerment work. And then our first work at this point is credit repairing program, which is very important and fundamental for a woman. So as I said, this abuse stays more than 7 years in women's life because of the bankruptcy. So imagine if somebody as a perpetrator continue abusing you, the future 7 years, it's a lot for a woman. And then you can imagine the generation trauma, the mental health and the stigma, and it's a lot. So that's why economic abuse is very complex to address, but we need to talk about it. That's what we advocate. Hopefully the Canadian banks would be our supporters, and that's my advocacy now and then, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing that and for shining a light. I think it's something that is definitely not talked about enough. And while you're talking, I feel like something that came up was, I think sometimes we don't really talk about or see how like historic anti-Blackness has continued being perpetuated through bank and finance systems. And even just like, this is a bad reference, but I was watching them, and there's scenes of like Black women with their husbands in a bank, and their husband is having to sign everything when it has to do with the house, when it has to do with money, everything. And then you're still seeing that today. A Black woman walks into a bank, and you can just feel and see the discomfort. You can see the way in which she's going to be treated, talked to, discouraged, poorly informed, and that is feeding right back into exactly what you're talking about. So thank you so much for sharing and for doing the work of challenging these huge institutions that continue this violence within our community. The next question is for Maya. And so as a founder of Loud Black Girls and Tell 'em Girl, you use the arts and spoken word as a form of empowering young girls and women, especially Black women and girls. Could you tell us more about the use of art as place of feminist activism and empowerment?
Sure. So I'll speak directly to spoken word poetry because that's kind of how it all started in that space. And its history has always been about using the gift of rhythm and voice to make your own voice heard. If we look at the history of hip hop, it was birthed from spoken word poetry, and these art forms were often demonized by society because of their willingness to call out white supremacy for what it was. And its effects on Black people. And, some of my favorite poets, Maya Angelou, Nikki Giovanni, and many others used their poetry to speak up for freedom fighters, when they were imprisoned. I was watching, there was an interview that took place with Nikki Giovanni and Angela Davis with this group called, I think they're called like Black Girl Trek or something like that. And she was talking about like the poems that she wrote for Angela Davis, like when she was in prison. And so, spoken word poetry has been used for Black liberation to encourage it, but to also empower the people that were doing that work. And it served the Black community as a tool towards vocalizing injustice and making room for healing as well. And so drawing on that history, we encourage folks to do their same in their own journeys by sharing their experiences through what is now at our events, various art forms. And so it's really incredible to see. And I think for myself, like I was mentioning earlier, it was really just sharing like my own story in that art form, especially because sometimes it's easier. Especially through spoken word poetry, it's often storytelling. You're telling a story of something that happened with a rhythm, and people can snap to it and cheer and be like, okay, I see you. And it's all about liberation and being free to vocalize that. And that's something that I think it's been incredible to be able to empower others to do, because like I was mentioning before, it is in defiance of all of these systems of oppression that we're facing. And so I like to use this art form and empower others to use this art form as well, to show them how it really feels to make their voices heard. I think we still live, in a society where people are being silenced and people aren't able to share their experiences. I went a very long time being told, don't share that, like, don't talk about that. You don't need to talk about that experience. Like, people don't want to hear about that. But they do, because other people are experiencing it too. And something that I really took away from a lot of our events is how many people are coming up and sharing what sounds like the same story, or the same, experience. And people would come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, like, I've been dealing with this for so long, and I didn't know that other people were dealing with it too until I came to this event, and like so many people spoke up about it. And I think that's why, these systems work so hard to silence us and make us feel uncomfortable with sharing that truth. Because the more that we're speaking about it, the more that we're becoming aware, and someone is coming to the events and saying, I didn't know about this, let me go out and do something about it. And so you'll hear a lot of stories from different, poetry events or different events from different art forms, especially that center, voices of the marginalized, where people are inspired by artwork to actually, implement systemic change. And that's kind of the work that I hope is being done at these events on a larger scale, but also just on a minimal scale. And I won't even say minimal scale because it's honestly huge that it even happens, where people are coming to these events and leaving feeling like, you know what, let me go out and just share my story. And I think one of the most amazing things is like seeing some people come to the events for the first time. And like I was saying, they're like, oh, I don't know if I should even share this, but like, here we go. And like 3 years later, they're running like organizations and winning awards and doing all of this crazy stuff. And it's like, wow, like this is all from you taking that first step of coming to an event, an open mic where you didn't know anybody and just sharing one story for 5 minutes. That changed your entire life. And because you took that step and because we had this space, now other people's lives are being changed too. So I think art is definitely something that we need to invest more in, because people are finding their voices and they're inspiring others to do the same in these spaces.
Thank you for sharing. I've been to events where you've spoken, and I remember sitting there and being like, let me go and write a little something. You know, I feel like there's something about your energy that really is just like, listen, they're trying to take our voice, exactly like you were saying. They're trying to take our voice, but we're going to give it to each other. We're going to find it for ourselves, and we're going to keep building, because the experiences of Black people are the experiences of the world. And so thank you.
Oh, I'm going to get you on stage one day. Now that you've said it, I'm going to be on you.
We'll be out here in hiding.
Also.
Pardon?
I said Leila can sing.
Oh, if you don't stop.
Okay, let me find out.
You're so wrong.
I need your people's contact, your agent, your manager, everything. Let's go.
Y'all ain't seeing me not one day after today. Ooh, okay, thank you. The next question is for Alicia Trifling. Out here exposing a nigga. So OBDC has been doing a ton of really incredible organizing work around challenging anti-Blackness in Ottawa and working towards a more equitable society. Could you share more with us about what your vision, a city that values, I'm so sorry. What your vision is for a city that values, celebrates, and uplifts Black folks, and what needs to be done to get there? I'm so sorry. I hope that was clear.
No, that's fine. Thank you. So I guess just before I start, I guess Maya, you've inspired me to share. I do want to share, like, I suffer from mental health, anxiety especially. And so being in this space even now is requiring me to address those things, and public speaking. And Maya, you're absolutely right. Like, these are spaces that we should share and open each other, or be safe spaces for us to have these conversations. I struggle with my anxiety in that when I'm feeling anxious, I forget like words. And so public speaking has become a little bit tough for me. So just thank you, Maya. And I'm sharing that because you've inspired me, because I know that happens to other folks, and we should allow like space and love for those moments. So with that said, so the Ottawa Black Diaspora Coalition really works to address systematic and anti-Black racism here in the city. We're currently focused on working towards defunding the police and reinvesting in ourselves and community, and targeting the root factors in crime and criminality of our experience of Black folks. So basically, OBDC takes community care and collective organizing very, very seriously. This isn't us working as individuals. We do work as a collective with other grassroots organizations. And so our demands and our demonstrations are largely in response to what is happening here locally in the city. So we are collectively demanding, in conjunction with other organizations, for things such as the permanent banning or the banning of dynamic entries. There's a lot of really grassroots organizations here in the city working really hard to have SROs, school resource officers, removed from schools. And so we support those movements, we support those organizations, and we definitely include those in our list of demands, again, because we want to organize as a collective. And so we aren't sitting, we are in a group of Black folks who are radical, sitting in intersections, being arrested, you know, causing a ruckus and going home. The work definitely, certainly continues after that. And so we are seeing demands met in the city. We are meeting with city officials, council members, council people. We are addressing issues at the Ottawa Police Association level and bringing attention to the power that the Ottawa Police Association has over the Ottawa Police Services, which is often overlooked in that there's only so much power and so much complaining we can do at one level. We do have to escalate. We do have to bring these issues to, we have to elevate them and bring them to the actual decision makers. So OBDC does do a lot of work and support in community. We also take a lot of time to sit with the community members after the sensationalism of an act is over. So when harm is caused, there's usually a lot of like trauma porn surrounding what has happened to the Black community. As soon as the 24-hour news cycle is over, those folks are often left alone, without aid, without services, and the story has gone on to the next big thing that's happening. And so we work really hard to support folks with things like legal services, counseling services, Black counseling services, because there's a difference, and that should also be noted. So we're really out here doing a lot of the community work, and what a city that values and uplifts Black and BIPOC folks is, and what we're working towards, I guess, is a city that acknowledges and addresses like socioeconomic issues like homelessness, unemployment, community health, education, and again, the over-policing of Black bodies, that be acknowledged and addressed. And so those are things that we're really out here advocating for the change of, and really working with as many collectives as possible. We do understand at OBDC that we are not the gatekeepers of Blackness. We are not championing for ourselves. We are having the larger conversations, because what a city that values Black folks looks like is going to be different for a lot of different Black folks. And so we're just working to ensure Black safety, to help improve Black joy. You know, Black folks can find joy in any situation. We will crack jokes at everything, every chance. Look at y'all, see, every chance we get. And so I wanted to acknowledge that and address that a little bit earlier, in that I personally, and this is going to sound a little, again, I'm going to be the pessimist here, but I don't find joy in the act of this work in itself. I sincerely don't. I find it heavy. I find it hurts. And rather than joy, I get moments of relief. I get moments of, I can stop holding my breath now. There was a verdict in our favor. There's somebody being held accountable. There was a small change. There was a suspension of the dynamic entry, not a banning of it. Like we have moments in my experience where I can exhale, but the joy, the moments of joy I find are in our ability to be so resilient and to crack up and crack jokes in our humor. Like Black folks are actually unmatched. We will laugh at anything. And so that is where our joy comes from. And again, so happiness and values look differently to Black folks. So we are having those collective conversations, but just loving each other, loving Black folks, acknowledging we are really the beginning, the center. We are all of it. We are embedded in all of it. We are culture, and just those moments. These moments are incredible. And so yeah, OBDC really, really is here for community in any ways that we can support and help, and make Ottawa just a better experience rather than just a survival. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing, especially with the joy. It really brought me back to the amount of times where Alicia and I have been at an action, and it's an action, of course, but we're finding joy, yelling at the cops. We're out here cussing out white people, and just wherever we are, always finding them.
Terrified, toe-to-toe with police, and just finding a moment of joy to crack a joke, to to be happy, to be alive. Like those
Mhm.
moments, those are the moments that I will take with me forever. Just our resilience and our humor. And to me, that's actually those are the best moments in this work, because the work is heavy. We all know this. It's heavy. It hurts. But we have Black love at the end of it. So
Even in the pandemic, we gave the people TikTok, we gave the people Rona, we gave the people every single thing that has held the people through this pandemic.
Twitter, like
Black Twitter,
Black
come on.
What?
Like, come on. If we weren't the original vaccine, come on.
Stop.
Listen. But I know that we are, and someone just put in, we gave the people verses. We gave the people verses. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Every single thing starts, ends with Black people.
Black
So,
culture, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I really don't know where we are on time. As anyone who knows me will know. Me and that nigga don't know each other. But I wanted to take a moment to thank the panelists so much for joining us today. And particularly to our, so I read this backwards. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us today, and particularly our incredible panelists. This last question marks the end of our prepared questions together, and then we will have some time to answer questions from the audience. So I just wanted to ask, who are your role models in life and in organizing? And we'll just do it popcorn style.
I'll go first, I guess. So personally, honestly, I look up to everybody in this panel, and so I was really nervous to like do it, because I was like, oh my gosh, these are like the elites, like these are the people I look up to, like these are some amazing people, and I'm like alongside them, like this is crazy. But yeah, I look up to everyone everyone in this panel. You guys inspire me so much, and like honestly, you inspire me so much. Like you guys are a big part of why I do what I do, and watching you guys and the work that you do has encouraged me so much in my own journey. And just like role models in life as well, is just also like you guys, and just like Black women in general in this city. You know, my mother, my grandmother, all of my aunties. Sarah Onyango is in this chat as well, and like you have watched me grow up from when I was like doing Teacher Suzanne's dance school when I was like 5 years old. So honestly, like Black women in Ottawa have all been a part of my upbringing, and have encouraged me so much. So yeah.
That's amazing. I was really great. Oh my God.
Did you want to go, Lise?
Well, I'm gonna have to edit mine because this was just dope, you know. So I'll go after whoever wants to go, because I need to think about something dope, you know. Oh, whatever. I'll just say, you know, my inspiration, my mom. You know, she was a woman in politics. She was killed when I was 9 years old. She was a patriot. She was a community organizer, and I think I'm following in her footsteps. You know, je suis ses pas. There are you know, women who come here who give up everything to start a new life in a new country, in a new system. You know, it's so hard. You know, I look, you know, sometimes they come without their children. They leave their children behind so they can prepare le chemin pour eux, and they end up sometimes in the hospital because it's too much for them, and it's so hard. They have to face racism for the first time in their lives because they have never been well, they were used to being in a country with only Black people around, right? And then boom, systemic racism hits them in the face. So all these women, men, they're my role models. Having 2 jobs, 3 jobs to keep up, you know, put food on the table when the children get here. Woo, I mean, you're my role models. And of course, women organizing Meseret, you know, let me look at those names: Alicia, Maya, Leila, Raylene, Sarah. I can't say all your names. Sophia, all of you guys. You know, I don't know what you all do. I don't know the details in your life, but I just know that you love your people. For you to be here and you were invited, that means, you know, you're doing something great. So thank you. Women like you, there are not many nowadays that care about the community, because it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of selfless, comment dire ça, il faut pas comme il faut vraiment comme ne pas trop t'es pas payé pour ça, t'es pas payé pour ça, pour ce travail qu'on fait. Donc so Maya, I'm copying you by saying that, wink wink. Mais sincèrement, comme role models, I'll say that my grandfather, Samuel Sindamuka, who fought for the independence of Burundi alongside the Prince Rwagasore, he's the one who inspired my mother. So of course I'm following in his footsteps as well, because I'm also you know, here in Canada fighting anti-Black racism for a reason. I'm looking up to him where he stood up for against colonization in Burundi. So I had to give him a shout out, you know. So shout out to him, shout out to my ancestors. Those, anyways, you know who you is. So I'll stop there. But yeah, I'm getting emotional. Okay, bye.
Yeah, I can go next. Thank you, Liz. Yeah, so for me, actually, you know, Liz, she already mentioned some of the thing, you know, it was in my mind, but definitely I have to say it loud. I get inspired by my community, definitely, especially in Ottawa, because I moved from Edmonton 5-6 years ago, and then Ottawa is my first destination in Ontario, so that was a big shift, but like I really inspired by especially a lot of Black sisters in my community. When I was in Edmonton, I couldn't get a chance to socialize with my Black folks because the demography is a little bit different when you live in the North Side and West Coast. So yeah, so there are really amazing community leaders, including Lyse-Pascale, Sophia Jacob. I know Sarah is here. And also there are a lot of friends. I know one of my good friend and supporter, she's here, Tamrak Veral, she's in Montreal. She did amazing job, and then specifically for this feminist movement. Even 2 years ago, she came from Montreal to Ottawa to attend Women March. I remember it was very cold at the Parliament Hill, and then she was, you know, really, she did an amazing job. So still she's here. She's also one of my inspiration. Yeah, she's she's writing something for me. And of course, I get also inspired by the survivors of violence, their resilience, their passion, their fight. It's really close to my heart. And then I'm very inspired by their life, by their strength, by their joy, tears, everything, you name it, because that's my life and that's my purpose I found. And of course, my mom, she's my inspiration, and she helped me to respect my past and then to honor as well, which means a lot. So that's also another step for me to build my resiliency. And she taught me as well that hard times can overcome and that losing battles can be a won. And then I proved that in my life, and she has taught me more than I could have learned from any book. And of course, she set an inspiration and example to me, teaching how life, you know, it would be, and also make a wise choice in my life. So that means a lot. And even, you know, to make a decision in the most uncertain situation. So I respect her a lot. She's my inspiration role model. And of course, all of you here, my, the panelists, Maya, and you did an amazing job, Alicia, and also Leah. Also, we had actually in one meeting together, I remember. So yeah, you all us, my inspiration, and thank you so much for having me.
Okay, I'll go next. Bear with me. This is probably going to sound like an acceptance speech of sorts. First, though, Leila, I apologize if I misgendered you, if I used the wrong pronouns. I apologize. I first want to just acknowledge all of the strong and incredible folks on this call. I definitely take my inspiration from the organizers and the work that is being done by the folks on this call and throughout Ottawa. So I think that is incredible. I am also from out west. I'm from Saskatchewan. Shout out to the prairies. And I am inspired by I'm inspired by my Indigenous mother, who is Cree and Blackfoot, and my Indigenous grandmother and all of the Indigenous women that came before them who survived colonialism and colonization and survived residential schools and group homes and the foster care system. I'm inspired so deeply by those women who survived intergenerational trauma and are survivors. So those folks inspire me. I am inspired by Leila, who is one of the first organizers that I met. My very first action here in Ottawa in front of the US Embassy in 2016, Leila was standing right beside me, educating me on the way with their little pigtails. And long denim dress. I will never forget that. Maya, I've worked with you and you inspire me so much. The words that you speak, the truth that you possess. We also have a family connection, and I feel like I feel very close to you, and I have this incredible, you make me feel like I understand your soul and your heart, and that really inspires me. I am inspired by my co-founder, Vanessa Dormain, who really just inspires me every day with the tireless work that she does and all of the boards she sits on and all of the time she just gives to our community. It really, really inspires me. On days when I'm just like, I'm not working, Vanessa's like, I'll do yours and mine type of thing. So I'm really inspired and moved by that, and just like the friendship and love that she's given me. I'm sorry, this is actually an acceptance speech. I'm inspired by all of the women on our team. OBDC is growing. Shout out to OBDC team. We have incredible folks on there that inspire me, young people who are students who are taking finals and working on masters. And I think we even have some doctorates. It's just the time that you make for this work is so inspiring to me. And it also reminds me that sometimes we have to do the work really just tired and exhausted and just still continue to show up. So those folks inspire me. Also, my daughters. I have two daughters. I had my first daughter when I was very young. I was 14 years old, and it's just been me and her since then. And she was at my side all the way through high school, all the way through university, and she inspires me just every day to see the amazing, incredible young woman, my partner in crime, just how she's grown up, and my youngest daughter who advocates for herself so fearlessly as a 10-year-old. I'm just so inspired by the young Black youth that are coming up, and just community. The community inspires me. Folks really show up and give love. If nothing else, it's just love. It's all love. And so I feel very blessed to be in this space. I've been here for about 6 years in the Ottawa-Gatineau region, and it's all love. Like I'm very blessed and happy to be here. So thank all of you folks for inspiring me. Thank all of you folks on this call who are doing this incredible, incredible work. It's amazing.
Thank y'all for your answers. I'm out here like, stay calm, don't get emotional. It's so beautiful. Honestly, Black people are just the best. The way that we love up on each other and inspire each other and hold each other and build with each other. Y'all are all inspiring. The people you named are inspiring. I know that when Alicia and your throwback, Lord. Never, honestly, the fact that, you know, I'm not even gonna dwell on that. That I was a mess. I was a mess. But to see where we were and where we are, and just all of the work that Black folks in the city have done to even create space for the next generation is amazing. And so I wanted to say thank you to you folks for being here in this conversation, for the work that you do, and for the ways in which you are allowing folks to come after us and do that work. So earlier when I said about time, I thought that we still had quite a bit of time. When I said time and I don't know each other, we really don't know each other. So it looks like we're about 20 minutes over. I think that I'm just gonna check if we still have time for questions. I don't know if there's anyone who can, I think that I saw 4 in the question and answer box. Is there still time for questions?
Hey, can folks hear me? I'm
Yes.
hoping. Okay, Zoom continues to baffle me. So unfortunately, I do think that we're going to have to pause on today's conversation. Unfortunately, I think that these are conversations that Women's March Ottawa needs to continue having, and we'll continue to have in the future. But I just want to say so deeply thank you so much for everyone who has joined us today. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of our panelists, to you, Leila, for moderating. This has been such an incredible session, and the best way that we could kick off the spring programming together. I wish that there was a chance that we could all do this in person and to be as a community. And I look forward to the day when we can be together, when it is safe to do so. And I just thank you again so much, everyone, for coming and for having this time. And hopefully this will be part 1 of endless parts, but today, unfortunately, I think we're going to have to wrap.
Okay. So I want to say one more really big thank you to everyone for all of you for sharing. Honestly, I will get to know time. We have the pandemic to get to know each other, and next time we'll have time for questions.
Let's get the vaccine first, okay?
Make sure we have that. I love it. Sliding in one more time, and one more time for the vaccine. But thank you folks so much, and thank you for Women's March for hosting this. I hope that Black folks will be able to be together and in community with everything that is happening over these times. We deserve to be able to hold each other. And so until next time, until that happens, take care, folks. I love you. Oh boy, do I love you. And have a great day.
Virtual hug.
Honestly,
Bye-bye.
Bring it in. Bring it in. I got long arms.